Hey my friends, Derek from Bomb Socks with more Bomb Bites, where we feast upon the words of Christ one bite at a time. So one thing I got to tell you about myself a little bit to kind of set up this episode. If I was left unsupervised for the day, I would just probably sit and watch home improvement shows. I don't know what it is, and the Food Network. That's a story for another time. But there's something about home improvement shows like Fixer Upper and Yard Crashers and some of these home flip shows that I just love. To me, there's almost a spiritual principle there as you're taking this thing that is completely undesirable. Nobody wants it. And you get someone with a little bit of skills, a little bit of creativity, and they take it and they turn it around and they make it something that is incredibly desirable and something that is now worth something. To me, there's a gospel principle there. And they make me happy. I love to watch them. So I could watch them all day long. Maybe that's why I love chapter 49 of Alma, because you've got the very same thing here. As you've got the Lamanite armies, you got Amalickiah and his armies trying to go in, and they're going after cities that they supposed, and you're going to see that word suppose a lot here, they suppose to be weak. In fact, verse number 1 of chapter 49, they're going in after the city of Ammonihah. You remember that horrible city back in Alma 13 that was completely, totally destroyed. Verse 2, behold, the city had been rebuilt. Moroni had stationed an army by the borders of the city, and they'd cast up dirt round about them to shield them from the arrows and the stones of the Lamanites. For behold, they fought with stones and arrows. Now, as Amalickiah had come in there, the end of verse number 3, they had supposed that it would again be easy prey for them. But behold, and I love this phrase, how great was their disappointment. For behold, the Nephites had dug up a ridge of earth round about them, which was so high that the Lamanites could not cast their stones and arrows at them, that they might take effect. Neither could they come upon them, save it was by their place of entrance. Verse 5, now at this time the chief captains of the Lamanites were astonished exceedingly. They'd exceeded the astonishment limit because of the wisdom of the Nephites in preparing their places of security. Now the leaders of the Lamanites had supposed, because of the greatness of their numbers, yea, they supposed that they should be privileged to come upon them as they had hitherto done. Yea, and they had also prepared themselves with shields and breastplates. You remember how we talked about this back on Tuesday, how they'd normally just run in there with a loincloth going, let's do this. They learned from the Nephites and they put on their own armor, and they had also prepared themselves with garments of skins, yea, thick garments to cover their nakedness. And being thus prepared, they supposed that they should easily overpower and subject their brethren to the yoke of bondage, or slay or massacre them according to their pleasure. But behold, to their uttermost astonishment, they not only exceeded it, but went to the very limits of astonishment. They were prepared for them in a manner which had never been known among the children of Lehi. That's pretty impressive. Now they were prepared for the Lamanites to battle after the manner of the instructions of Moroni. And it came to pass that the Lamanites, or the Amalickiahites, were exceedingly astonished at their manner of preparations for war. Now, cool little principle here in verse number 11. Amalickiah did not himself come down to battle because, he's that kind of a selfish guy. But behold, his chief captains durst not attack the Nephites at the city of Ammonihah. For, and I love this statement, Moroni had altered the management of affairs among the Nephites. Such a cool phrase. Insomuch the Lamanites were disappointed in their places of retreat that they could not come upon them. One important thing here is as the enemy started to increase their preparations, the Nephites did the same thing. As Moroni altered the management of affairs, he saw that the enemy was starting to advance, so he advanced himself as well with that. The defenses of the past are not going to be good enough for future attacks from an enemy that is constantly advancing. I was listening to a business podcast the other day, and one of the things they brought up was new levels, new devils, which I thought was kind of an interesting statement. As Satan continues to increase and advance in his creativity and the way he's trying to tempt people, we need to adjust and increase our preparations as well. The preparations of the past are not going to do it. We need to keep moving forward in the ways that will overcome that adversary, and that will give us, as it says later on in this chapter, all power over our enemies. I love that little principle. Another cool little principle here, verse number 12. They retreated into the wilderness and took their camp and marched towards the land of Noah, supposing to be the next best place for them to come against the Nephites. For they knew not that Moroni had fortified or had built forts of security for every city in the land all about them. They marched forward to the land of Noah with a firm determination. Their chief captains came forward and took an oath that they would destroy the people of that city. And what happens? Verse 14, but behold, to their astonishment, the city of Noah, which had hitherto been a weak place, had now by the means of Moroni become strong, yea, even to exceed the strength of the city of Ammonihah. One of the things I've done with this scripture, I've put in one of my favorite verses of all time, Ether 12:27. Many of you are familiar with it. If men come unto me, I will show unto them their weakness. I give unto men weakness that they may be humble, and my grace is sufficient for all men who humble themselves before me. For if they humble themselves before me and have faith in me, then will I make weak things become strong unto them. A little bit of preparation, those cities of weakness can become strong cities, and that's what Moroni has done here. And thus, as it says through the rest of these verses, they were prepared, and you see that phrase, they were prepared to defend themselves. Thus the Nephites had all power over their enemies. Now you go over to chapter 50 and you see a very cool principle in verse number 1. Even though they had all power over their enemies, Moroni did not stop making preparation. And you see over the next few verses, heaps of earth round about the cities. On top of those ridges of earth, you've got timbers to the height of a man. And then you've got frames of pickets up on top of them. And then you've got towers over top of them. Moroni was awesome in preparing his people, which leads to all kinds of fortifications and security, to the point where verse number 12, thus Moroni with his armies, which did increase daily because of the assurance of protection that his works did bring forth unto them. Moroni is leading a good group of people, and he's showing them the importance of preparation. Now, you remember President Nelson several years ago encouraged us to remodel our homes into homes that the Spirit can be there more, and the devil would not have power. Over time, and that's a key element to this, over time, the devil will not have power over our families. That's a cool promise as we go through the same process. Now, I find it interesting that Mormon throws in a cool little phrase here in verse number 23. Even though this is a time of war, as Moroni is preparing his people, verse number 23, again, Mormon's commentary, behold, there never was a happier time among the people of Nephi since the days of Nephi than in the days of Moroni, even at this time in the 21st year of the reign of Judges. As you've got a time of war, as you are preparing yourself, you can be happy during that time period. It is possible to find happiness during times of personal warfare. This last week, we were over at a Christian Product Expo in Indiana, and we met some wonderful Christian friends who are just as faithful as can be. We met one lady who had lost a child, and she had written a book, and the whole concept of the book was finding grace during the grief. And she sat there and bore her testimony of Jesus Christ to us as we're sitting there talking to her about this. And I saw someone who was finding happiness during times of war. It can be done. It is not easy. It requires a lot of preparation. It requires a lot of remodeling. It requires constant revamping of our lives, but we can do it. And I love the principles in this chapter, and I am grateful for them. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and thanks for sharing these messages. We are so grateful, as always, that you do this. If you like what you see, please click that like button. It helps get that message out there. And if you haven't already, you got to go check out our amazingly comfortable gospel-themed socks at BOM-BITES.com. Godspeed. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.